was a little bit high. Guys, today, what is this start now? I'm going to try and start now. See what start now does. Guys, today I'm going to be talking about 3 ways to relieve sciatica and lower back pain. So whether it's sciatica you've got specifically, or it's lower back pain you've got specifically. And I'm going to talk about the 3 ways that you are going to be relieving your back pain. And hopefully this is going to help you guys troubleshoot through the significant volume of information that is out there on the internet that is there to help you guys, right? A lot of this stuff, you know, what's this here? Let's have a look at what that is quickly, or maybe not so quickly. Anyway, we'll leave that out. Okay. So a lot of you guys will be looking through the internet and you see different things, right? We had a question in the group about some little patch you can use. You might see certain stretches that are going to be really good for your lower back pain, certain movements and practices, etc. The list goes on. And we want to have this kind of lens through which we can evaluate whether these practices are going to be helpful for the injury or harming. And the first and most important thing that you have to understand is the pain or the symptoms are not the problem. The problem is the problem, which is giving rise to the symptoms. And when it comes to lower back pain and sciatica, we're talking about pain here, pain down here, pain down the leg, here, big toe, that kind of stuff. Sciatica. We're talking about symptoms that might be in the lower back or going down the leg that are generated from an injury down here in the lower lumbar spine. Specifically speaking, we're going to be talking most commonly about L5S1, which is the green to the orange, and L45, which is this one to this one. That is where the majority of the injuries at the root cause of the pain that you're experiencing are going to be residing, right? And it's your classic, you've got your disc bulge, you've got your disc herniations, those kind of injuries down here that are irritating maybe some of the nerves, giving you sciatic pain down the leg, or giving rise to muscle spasm, a very common one, in the lower back, in the buttocks, in the legs, etc. And it is often those symptoms that drive you to go and get the appointment or go online, whatever it may be, to get the help that you need. And it is maybe the lack of quality of the advice that you see or the guidance that you see either from your clinician or from your GP or whatever, or from your surgeon or whoever, or the stuff that you read online that leads to this confusion. And there are really 3 ways that you're going to be helping this sciatica, and it's helping the root cause of the problem, right? And so the first strategy, if we let the sandwich truck go by, the first strategy we're going to be using to relieve our back pain or sciatica, and I will use examples here so you guys can understand and have something to take away, if you will. The first way is going to be something that is directly helping the injured tissues. It's working at that level, right? And I'll also use a treatment example here as well, perhaps. So when we do something like the bed decompression, or we do something like the towel decompression, we are directly taking pressure off the lumbar spine, right? If we acknowledge that most of the injuries are happening, they are compressive pathologies, meaning we are squashing down on that lumbar spine at L45 or L5S1, which has led to the injury at that segment, usually involving the herniation of the disc or damage to the annulus fibrosis, etc., etc. We have a compression issue at this level here. So if we're doing something like the towel decompression, which is where we take a rolled up towel, like so, and place it lying down underneath our lumbar spine to support the natural curve, we're directly taking pressure off that lumbar spine. We're doing a number of other things that are beneficial as well. We are directly taking pressure off the tissue that is injured, right? So we're doing a relief strategy for our back pain or sciatica that's targeting the underlying injury. Another example of this might be in the clinical application of something like laser therapy, where you're using laser at this section here to help with the tissue healing, or decompression therapy, spinal decompression, where you're decompressing this particular section. These are methods which are working directly on the target injured tissues to help them go through a healing process, right? That's the first category. That ideally is going to be the premier strategy, the one that actually is doing something direct. Then a significant number of the next lot, or rather a significant number of the stretches and the strategies that you're going to deploy to relieve your back pain and sciatica are going to fall into this next category, which is number 2. These are indirectly going to help that area. So for example, if we take a hamstring stretch, now hamstring stretch could fall into category number 3, which we'll get onto a little bit later. But if we perform a hamstring stretch correctly, or we use a massage gun to work on the hamstrings, obviously being reasonable, we are going to have an indirect effect on the lower back. So we might well do our little hamstring stretch, boom, you can feel the stretched hamstring, hold it there, we do 30 seconds, whatever it may be, and we're going to get an instant increase in the mobility of the hamstrings. Why is this important? Because when we are moving, when we're doing things, etc., moving through daily life, our hips, if our hips are a little bit more mobile, if we've eliminated some of the stiffness at the level of our hips, it means that our lower back has to do less. If I have very, very, very stiff hamstrings and I want to get into the chair, let me just move into the right position. Okay. If my hips are really, really stiff, I have to round my lower back to get into the position. If my hips move a little bit better because I've loosened off my hamstrings, I can sit more readily with a neutral spine, and therefore it has an indirect effect on my lumbar spine. It's taking pressure off the area, the target area. And so it's got that indirect effect. Using a massage gun on those muscles has an indirect effect. It's a knock-on effect for the better after we have done that particular stretch or that particular massage work. Another example of this would be the case where we're having maybe some treatment from your massage therapist. They're not able to do anything specifically to the injured tissue, but they can work on the hamstrings to loosen them off so they're moving a little better. They can work on other areas of the body so that they are moving a little bit better. I've used the example many times before, just scrolling through some of the comments here on TikTok from you guys. A lot of you guys jumping in here. Awesome. I've talked about this before, that you might go to see your chiropractor and they might work on the neck. This is a more disjointed example, but I'll bring it back to something a little bit more relevant. Your chiropractor, your osteopath, your physio might work on the neck. Why is that relevant? Well, you get out of your car, you pull out of your driveway every morning and you check your blind spot. If you're checking your blind spot and you've got a really stiff neck, then you're going to turn around in your lower back, and that compression and rotation is going to irritate the lumbar spine. Right? That's irritating the injury. So if my neck is working a little bit better and I don't need to crank my lower back, it's got an indirect effect on my lower back, on the injured tissue, right? My disc herniation at L5S1 isn't being stressed as much every morning when I turn to check my blind spot because my neck moves a little bit better. Equally, they could do some work on the hips. So they have that indirect effect. So just to recap before we get into the third option, we've got relief strategies such as the towel decompression, bed decompression, or treatments that directly target the injured tissues to take pressure off them without making the problem worse. This is very important because we'll get onto that in number 3. We've then got indirect ones, such as the hamstring stretch or massage work on other muscles or mobilizing the neck or mid-back to help those areas work better to take strain off the lower lumbar spine. So that has that indirect effect. And then we get to the third category. These are things that are providing us with a moment of relief, so they feel good, but they are subsequent to that actually making the problem worse. And if we use the classic example that we talk about all the time of that knee hug, where we are aggressively hugging the knees towards the chest, what are we doing here? We have a lot of inflammation in the lower back around that injured segment down here. And when we have inflammation building up around here, maybe there's a bit of disc in the way as well, and that's creating our symptoms. And to provide relief, we are maximally forward bending like so to create more space. That feels nice because it creates more space where this little nerve is coming out. But as a consequence of doing this movement, we are directly stretching and straining all of the tissues that are trying to knit back together again here, thereby undermining the healing process. We can also take the hamstring stretch I mentioned a moment ago. And when we're doing the hamstring stretch, if we do the hamstring stretch in an incorrect way, it moves the hamstring stretch from a category 2 relief-based thing, something that works indirectly to help the healing process, to something that's in category 3. Although it feels nice in the moment, because I'm rounding my lower back when I'm doing my hamstring stretch, I'm actually making the problem worse. I'm violating those principles of maintaining a neutral spine and not putting undue, inappropriate strain through those tissues. And so those are the 3 categories that we fall into when we are when we are looking to relieve our lower back pain and our sciatica. And most of what you need to understand is if we're working towards the underlying cause of the problem and we understand the role of the spine, how it fails, and the kind of strains that lead to that. For most of you, I saw a comment on TikTok today, and the person said, I had a surgery a couple of years ago, and then a couple of weeks ago or so, I was bending down to pick up my trainers, and it went again, and I've had another surgery as a consequence, right? So what were we doing? Bending down to pick up the trainers, right? We haven't built in any element of strength and resilience back into that lumbar spine. It's still vulnerable, which is why it went picking up something that is not heavy, right? But the point is, Most of you guys that injure your back, it's this, that. It's those things that are going to be the things that are causing your aggravation, causing your pain. So repeating those movements is not wise. Yet, unfortunately, because of the nature of the lower back and the way in which inflammation builds up in these holes, so often, if you're not given guidance, you allow your back pain to get worse and worse and worse to the point where you just feel like you have to round that lower back to stretch this area off. And if you aren't given this guidance, you can't filter out which kind of relief strategies are actually helpful and which are giving you this false sense of security and unfortunately making you worse. And things like knee hugs and child's pose and rocking the knees left and right and mobilizing this injured segment are things that are done time and time and time again, and they don't help people get better, unfortunately. They're the kind of thing that more or less all of the thousands and thousands and thousands of members and patients that have come to us, either in the clinic over the years or through the program, are doing those stretches over and over again and not getting any meaningful progress in their symptoms, because you can't really justify or explain out a mechanism by which the knee hug is actually improving the injury. You can't. The rationale is do the knee hug because it'll stretch the area out. Okay, how is that progressive over time? Well, it's just going to stretch it more. Okay, well, how are we making things better? How are we improving the resilience of the structures that can't bear load at the moment? So it's not goal orientated. Oscar said here, after doing squats this morning, I feel pain after about 7 hours now. Is it normal? Oscar, you've just moved up to a very high level of the squats. I hope you haven't done the squats again after that video that I saw you upload in the group. Well done, by the way. I've put some commentary in there for you. One of the big things that you've got to be mindful of for you guys, when you get to a level of training in your rehab, for references, we're doing 60 kilo squats here now, we've built up, right? When you get to a new level, one of the things you really need to manage is the stiffness post-workout, right? So if we've done some hard squats and some hard step-ups and those kind of things to build resilience and done them with correct form, it is very reasonable to suggest we're going to have some stiffness in the legs. No, is that one? I'm not sure what we're saying. No, is that one? But we're going to have stiffness in the legs, and we have to manage that stiffness in the legs. Otherwise, it's going to bother us through the rest of the day. It's going to restrict that hip mobility. So, Oscar, one of the most important things, I mean, there's two things here to consider. 7 hours ago, we've done a bunch of other stuff during the day, and if there's that stiffness, that DOMS, that delayed onset muscle soreness post-workout, it's going to be something that we need to manage, and probably we've been irritating our back a little bit after the session as a result of the various things we're doing, right? When you finish a good leg session, your legs are pumped up and you have a little bit less mobility. So if we haven't done a nice little bit of post-workout stretching, that kind of stuff, a little bit of massage gun work, and we're not aware of this, it can bother us a little bit. The most important thing, that's why you've got your care of self stuff, your decompression work, your lower body stretching, you use massage gun, you manage this stuff, to manage the post-workout reaction nicely, and you'll go through a nice smooth recovery. And that's also one of the reasons Oscar has said. So Oscar's just jumped up and done a new level of strain on the squat, 60 kilos, right? For some solid reps, by the way. Very, very nice, right? Really, really good. But we don't want to be thinking about doing the hip hinge tomorrow, which was in the comment, which I saw in the group. We want to make sure we're focusing on, giving ourselves now a nice couple of days to recover from that, focusing on care of self. Maybe tomorrow you go into the gym and do some like 20 kilo lightweight squat workout just to get the muscles moving, help drain some of those waste products, work on care of self over this next few days. And so we'll be ready to be doing some kind of hip hinge workout towards the back end of the weekend, I would suggest. So, but definitely give us an update and monitor and observe how you respond to this, because you're likely to experience a similar sort of thing when you do the same kind of new intensity to the hip hinge as well. So just be mindful of that, and that care of self stuff being ramped up afterwards, trying your best to be mindful of what you're having to do after you've finished your workout as well with regards to work commitments over the working day is also going to be helpful, and that way we can smoothly move into this new intensity or difficulty of exercise or rehabilitation. Max has said, Oscar said, so no upper body work. So upper body, yeah, just again, remember, Oscar, you're gonna have a little bit of stiffness in those leg muscles. So when you are getting the weights out, right, you're getting, you pick up, you got your 20 kilo plate, you're gonna come over here, you're gonna load it on the bar. Just be mindful of how you're using your body, because your hips are gonna be a little bit stiff, right? The hips are gonna be a little bit stiff over the next few days. And you've just got to manage that a little bit and be mindful that it might limit some of your mobility in general everyday life, including while you're doing the upper body workout. So just be mindful of that. As long as you do that, yeah, upper body workout will be perfectly fine. I would suggest doing like even just some playing around with some squats, even if it's a bit informally, like body weight on the bar, and just kind of like coming down here, just feeling like nice neutral spine, right? Nice, I'm nice and upright here, you know, and we're just feeling it out. Just getting that range of motion through those muscles just to help get rid of some of the waste products that you've built up there from the workout. But great work on that workout. Max has said here, 4 years of sciatica now, it's gotten way better, but it's still there. Have you heard of this problem going away after this long, or am I screwed? It has gotten better. I think one of the important things, guys, is just because if it's got better to this point, why are you saying this is as far as it can go? You know, that's important to bear in mind. Max has also said, I have physical therapy places hurting my back, making me do flexion exercises. Max, I would strongly suggest check out the program, because that'll give you the structure that you need to rebuild the back. You know, I'll put a link in here for you guys. Those of you guys on TikTok, you can go and check out the link in the profile page if you need any more help. But get working on some proper rehabilitation work. You know, that's important. The physical therapy places, my understanding of that, although it's not always going to be the case, is that those places you're doing the exercises, right? But if they are, just because they are a physical therapy establishment or a physiotherapy establishment or an osteopathic clinic, doesn't mean they are operating from the same philosophy that we would operate from. They might be getting you there doing all bending, twisting exercises. That's not going anywhere. And I would say 4 years isn't that long, Max. You know, I know it feels like a long time to you. And I know it'll feel like a long time to someone who's only struggled with it for a couple of months. 4 years will sound like, you know, an eternity, and it is when you're struggling. I say it's not that long because whether it's 4 months, 4 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that kind of thing, like when you start doing the right stuff, you can turn things around pretty quick. Like you really can, in spite of those things, you can turn things around pretty quick. It's not going to be overnight, but in a relatively short period of even a week or so of doing the right things and seriously engaging with the education process, you can do things well. And I think the biggest thing to be cognizant of, aware of, is that most of you guys have been struggling to deal with your back pain. Your back pain education consists of a 10-minute appointment with your GP, if that, your medical practitioner and your medical doctor, that most of that is the pleasantries of coming in, the prescription that they're writing for you, and off you go. You've been given next to no education. And so why would you do well with these things, right? You don't know about the back. You don't understand the back because you haven't been taught the back, because the practitioners or the setup and the support, the health support just hasn't been there. And in a lot of cases, going from personal experience as well, when we were focused on the clinical side of things only, you're going to see your clinician who's doing treatments on you, and they're so interested in, you're paying them to do treatments. They want to be as impactful as possible with those treatments. And they're not necessarily devoting the time necessary to the education for you outside of the clinic. So you're very dependent on those treatments, perhaps. Maybe you get a bit disenfranchised after a while, or maybe you just get dependent on them and it's a good relationship, but you're not actually being educated outside the clinic. So you have an hour session with them once a month, and then every single week there's 168 hours, and I'm not going to do the maths on that, but there's a lot of hours that you're going to be on your own doing things, and if you're not educated in that time frame, what is 1 hour's worth of treatment going to realistically do to the health of your back if you're going out there and just abusing it for the next 168 times 4, you know, for the next 4 weeks until you have your next treatment? So you have to pair treatment with rehabilitation. Or rather, you have to have rehabilitation, and if you have the financial means and the interest and the desire to, adding in and embellishing it like icing on cake with some treatments or some professional interventions at the same time. But the base work has to be done, and it can be done, and it can make some significant improvements even if you've had it a long period of time. Katerina said, I had a safari trip after an episode in May, a hernia L1. I don't know where to start to get fit again. The basics. Always start with the basics, guys. Squat, the hip hinge, focus on technique first. If you focus on finding the right technique with your squat and hip hinge, you're formulating a very good practice that is going to also benefit you from in daily life, right? And it's very, very low strain. You're already getting out of chairs, so doing a squat's not really a big deal. And if you're practicing your squat range to here, then the chair is obviously lower than that. So you're regularly getting in, you're starting to improve the way in which you can do these things. And that's not really challenging the muscles in any meaningful way. And then you play around with a couple of weights You start building some of the weight that you're using, testing, and you're still not really challenging yourself effectively. And then you find that point that you are actually challenging yourself, but you've got really good form. And then you build on from there. This is what we literally take people through in the program. I would argue the structure we have for the program, whereby it's technique first, safe technique with very low cost of failure, and then just learning the choreography of using weights that are negligible, even like holding your massage gun and doing a squat with it. It's not very heavy. Holding your water bottle and doing a squat with it, just to get used to the practice. Because I know it sounds silly to some of you guys who have experience, but some people really struggle when they go from doing a squat like this, right? They're doing squats like that, okay? And then all of a sudden they have to hold something, right? This can feel strange, right? It can feel strange if we're having to now hold something. How do I do it? And so you practice with something light, and then you get, okay, now I've got my squats down with the weight, then I can go. So we build it up like that. You've got the technique first. Then maybe we do some minor choreographic training to continue building technique with slightly different metrics, holding on to weights, so that we can then build the foundation to then test ourselves and build strength, find the right level to actually challenge ourselves. Is it 25 kilos? Is it 20 kilos? Is it 37? Is it 6 kilos on the squat? And then we train at that level and build from there, and that's what allows us to train effectively. Now that's the formula that we use inside of the Back in Shape program over the 4 phases to help people safely start to rehabilitate their back. It's something we've been using for a long time, like that structure, if you will. And it works, it really works. But I would strongly argue that's what any one of you guys should be doing if you go to the gym without a back injury. You go and play around with the bench press or some other exercise, you want to get into it, you need to act in a responsible manner. Focus on technique first. This is fundamentally the violation of this reasonable and conservative training approach is why so many people will again this year, in a few months' time, go into 2026 in January, join the gym, hammer themselves for a few weeks with no care no appropriate levels of care to the technique, and then they'll be injured by early February and they'll be, back off the wagon again. So please, if there's anything you learn from this, make sure you focus on technique first. Now, the other side of that is that you're so obsessed about technique that you don't actually ever challenge yourself, and that's a problem as well. You have to make sure you're progressing. But yeah, hopefully that helps. Just looking through some more of these comments. What have we got? The Jesh said, just started doing the core 5 with 5 kilo dumbbells. When should I increase the weights? How many kilograms? Nobody knows. Nobody knows how much weight you should be using. You don't know. I don't know. Your surgeon doesn't know. Your GP doesn't know. Nobody knows. The local guy at the corner shop doesn't know. The guy in the coffee shop doesn't know. Nobody knows. That's the point. And that's why we have, for example, in the phase 3 of the program, we structure it so that you go to the gym and you go, right, okay, I know 5 kilos. 5 kilos is like a reasonably conservative weight to choose for like the squats, for example. So you get out the 5 and you get out the 10 and maybe you have smaller increments, right? And you just pop them down on the floor here, right? You got the 5, you got the 10, you got a 15, right? And you got, I'll just use 3 because I don't want to be here all day, right? You've got 3, and you're going to do your first set and you're going to do your 5. So you do your 10 reps, right? Obviously, I'm doing them quickly, so that's not actually, we do our squat, careful down, right? And then we go, okay, that was fine, okay, but then we'll give ourselves a few moments, and then we'll pick up the next one and go 10 kilos, okay, down, okay, that feels okay, okay, that was all right, and then, okay, this is 15, how's this? Oh, that feels heavy. Oh, I don't know about that. That's too much. Where's a 12? Where's a 12? I'll get a 12 instead, right? And that's how we kind of do it, right? I'm brushing through it very, very quickly, of course. You set yourself up with appropriate technique, get your feet in the right place, engage your core, get yourself nice and tight, ready to go. But that's how you do it, right? And then you go, oh, actually, do you know what? That 15 was too much. I'll go to 12, And then you go from there. You build up from there. That's how we do it. That's the kind of stuff that we're doing in the phase 3 of the program, helping you guys get to that point and safely expose yourself to that. I would have a strong recommendation. You should make sure that you're recording yourself when you're doing that, right? Notice I did it side on to you guys, ish. Record yourself from the side. Because then when something goes wrong, if it does, you've got a recording. Moved my back a bit funny there. I can see why I went wrong. You learn something. All of you guys have smartphones, right? You're watching this nowadays. Basically, everybody has a smartphone, which means everybody has or knows someone that does have some means of recording their progress for free. You should be doing that. If you're not, I would ask you, how serious are you about actually getting better from your back pain? If you haven't recorded your exercises or your rehab on your phone in the last week, are you actually serious about getting better? Right? It's a serious question, and it might raise a few, ruffle a few feathers, but it is a serious question. That you have these tools now, they cost nothing. And we should be doing that, because what you'll find is you learn something. Even if you did it bad, you learn something. I didn't realize I was doing that. I didn't realize I was doing that. That doesn't look right. Very important. Secret team says lower the weight and learn good form. Bodybuilding basics, yes. But so many people don't follow the basics because the basics aren't sexy. The basics don't look cool on social media, but the basics work, and they're the foundations. Bia says, L4 spondylosis. I'm almost pain-free taking these core exercises correctly and religiously. That's awesome. And on the topic of core exercises, people often say, hey, Mike, well, you talk so much about the squats and you talk about the hip hinges. They're not core exercises. We have members say, right, because we focus a lot more on the squat and hip hinge as people move through the program, because the squat and hip hinge is so vital. But people, rightly so, ask questions, right? And as we wouldn't do these lives if we didn't like questions, right? And we've done 246 was this Wednesday, and we did 150 before that. So we've done a lot of live sessions, right, with our members, and obviously we've been doing them more recently with you guys as well, and I know a couple of you members come on, right? So we always encourage questions. But people ask, well, where's the core exercise? Why are we not doing core exercise? Understand that the dead bug, marching bridge, other floor-based core exercises move from challenging to being more priming exercises as we progress on. You make no mistake, your spine is part of your core. And if you're only doing floor exercises with you lying down, you are not training the spine. You are not challenging the spine. The spine is not getting stimulation. And so for the most complete exercises for the core region, including the spine, which is the thing that's injured, we must be doing load-bearing exercises and understand that the progression of that load-bearing exercise is the thing that is strengthening the core in the most complete manner. And that's a very important paradigm shift, because sometimes people say, oh, I'll go and do some like hanging leg raises or this, that, the other. And it's like, sure, but that's not building a strong, strong core. And the testing of the core is done through, will it fail if you put load through it? And everybody fails at some point. Everybody fails at some point. There are no exceptions. Our job is to mean that we don't fail, like I mentioned in the example earlier on, we don't fail picking up our trainers. We don't fail picking up our toddler. We don't fail walking the dog. That is not a good example of good core strength, core stability, or just human being resilience. But great B that you're doing some good work. That's awesome. What else have we got here? I've been doing the core 5, but I think I haven't been able to get the exercises correctly. Yes, so one of the realizations should be, for many of you guys that have been struggling for a long period of time with back pain and sciatica, should be that, goodness me, I suck at these exercises. Ouch, that hurt. When my leg went out when I did the dead bug, that hurt. When I did the squat, I tried, oh, it hurts. Oh, it hurts. Why does it hurt? Because I'm rounding my lower back. That's incorrect, okay? When does it start to hurt? About here, okay? Don't go that low. Go to, okay, cool. Some of you will struggle more than that. You're weaker. We had one of the members talking about it the other day, that they had over a year of being bedbound, just trying to avoid everything, shying away from things. Completely understandable, but not advisable in the slightest. And so in that scenario, it might be that when you start off with your squats, you're holding onto the door frame and you're doing a squat like so. Maybe that's all your squat is. But in the moment that you realize that's all you can do for a squat without getting aggravation, you must realize that that is a good thing, because it explains why you don't go a day in your life without aggravating your lower back, or you can't get through a full week without having aggravated sciatica, because you're only competent enough to bend your knees slightly before things fall apart. And the great news with this is that the only person that's going to fix this is you. It's you. You're the only one that can fix that. Carefully, you're going to work to improve that. But you realize in that same moment that, well, you're getting onto the toilet seat, you're getting into bed every morning, you're putting your shoes and socks on, in spite of the pain, but now you've got something that you can materially improve every single day. Much of the benefit and the symptomatic improvement that you guys posting here that say like, oh, I'm doing the core 5, I'm feeling better, or if you're members of the program that you feel in those early stages, much of that benefit is you just being technically better so you stop messing yourself up every day, right? That's the real benefit that you're getting in those early days. You're not actually building any resilience as much as allowing natural healing to start to take place uninterrupted or less interrupted. Because the body will try its best to go through that healing process every single day, whether it's 4 years, 4 months, 4 days, or 4 hours. It's going to still be trying to respond to the stresses and strain of life and go through a healing and adaptation process. And so much of the benefit is that technical improvement early on. And the great thing about it is technical improvement can happen from the first rep, that you're actually stopping and thinking about it. I discussed the other day on the live about the difference getting out of a chair can make for someone struggling with sciatica. So many times you guys will go like that and try and get out and oh gosh, it hurts. But if you just set yourself, get your feet under, get that cue like I mentioned the other day, toes underneath, and then you go straight up, you realize, gosh, that didn't hurt. Didn't even hurt at all. Oh, ow, hurt my back because I moved funny again afterwards, right? But you get the idea, right? Just that education, that technical improvement, which can happen immediately, can start to have positive effects. And then, obviously, you build resilience over the period of months and weeks and months going forwards. But we can get some real improvement pretty quick if we just start doing things correctly. We've got can foot and ankle numbness from an L5S1 disc go away naturally. This is a very confusing question that people will often have, right? Can my pain go away naturally? Can my symptoms go away naturally? Back pain heals naturally, okay? Yes, as I just mentioned, your body is trying to heal every single day. You don't need to conscientiously try and heal your bad disc any more than you try and heal your graze on your elbow. You don't think about healing, it happens automatically. It happens naturally. It happens normally in all of us at all times, whether we're 15 or 51, whether we're 27 or 72. It doesn't make a difference. The body is trying to heal. The problem is that people get that information and they go, huh, okay, it'll heal on its own. It will, if you don't get in the way of the healing process. And the biggest problem with back injuries is that you have to use your back every single day and you're not really that aware of it. Whereas the graze on my elbow, I can make sure that I don't bang it on the corner of the table when I'm sitting at dinner. Or I can make sure I don't rub it through my sleeve as I put my clothes on. And sometimes I'll catch it and it pulls the scalp and then I'm bleeding again and oh gosh, terrible, right? But with the back, it's a bit more difficult. So they are trying to heal naturally. You need to get out of the way of that process and you do that by learning how to use your body more effectively. And that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about time and time again. Let's have a look what we've got. What else have we got here? So, JP has said, I think my mattress is too soft. I wouldn't worry about mattresses generally. People often ask about sleeping with back pain and do I need a different mattress? Should I get a hard one, a soft one, a hybrid, a spring, and this, that, the other? And I think that is the wrong time to be asking that question. There is one question about mattresses that you need to ask if you've got a back injury, and you should have asked it before you had a back injury, and that's, is the mattress broken and bowing in the middle, right? If the mattress is like 25 years old, it's broken and bowing in the middle and the slats underneath don't work, and you need a new one, right? Just the same as if you're walking with your trainers and you had a hole in the shoe, in the sole, because you worn them out, you need to get a new one, right? It's gonna be helpful. But short of a mattress, like if you bought a mattress a couple years ago and it's still in good condition, don't go out and buy a new mattress. Very, very important. You're just wasting your money. Because what's more is the positions that you might choose to sleep in while you have back pain and while you're recovering from back pain might not necessarily be the positions that you actually find most comfortable long term. So you went and bought this funny mattress for £5,000 or £2,000 or $1,500, whatever it is, and then you're out of back pain, be like, oh, this is so uncomfortable all the time. Like I'm not in pain, but it hurts my shoulder a bit and my neck feels a bit uncomfortable, and you got the wrong mattress for you, right? So if you need to buy replace your mattress, buy a new one, right? But just be mindful. Don't be so quick to go out there and change your mattress. If it's old and it's broken and it's not conditioned correctly, sure, go and buy another one. But focus. People fail to focus, and if you're getting 100% of your day right, sure, have a look at if you can make optimizations while you're unconscious. But a lot of you guys will struggle to stick with the principles while you're conscious, let alone worrying about the time when we're unconscious. JP has said, I feel like my job is in the way 24/7. You know, having the mobile valeting, that is going to be tough, right? It is tough, but it's not insurmountable. I always say the hardest job is having a toddler or a young child and having a herniated disc, and you can't quit that job, and you can get better in spite of it. So, you know, just bear that in mind. It's tough. Acknowledge that it's a harder task, you know, and then carry on. That's the way we go. Saxox has said, I'm worried about the correct form. How do I know we're doing these exercises correctly? That's why we've got tutorials. You know, if you are worried about it, we've got many videos that are available freely online, but if you are worried about it, if you need more help, you're someone that knows you need more help, then if you're on TikTok, go and look at the link up there, I think it is. If you're on YouTube, I've posted it in the chat. Check out the video on that page, on the website. It tells you a little bit more about the program, and I'd get stuck in there. We have, you know, strategy sections, tutorial sections, tutorial videos, how to do each of these exercises in different ways, troubleshooting videos. We have members that upload their videos, like I was saying about Oscar uploading his squats on 60 kilos, great work to him. They upload them to the group. We have a look at them, adding comment, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that right, that's great, move on, whatever it may be. You get that guidance, that feedback. And you get it like in 24 hours, like every single day we're in there on the members area, feedbacking members, commenting, giving guidance, all that kind of stuff, right? Some of you guys will be able to do it on your own, but others of you will want a bit more support. And like, if you need more support, it's there, it's available. Go and check it out. What else have we got in here? What exercise is the best to start? I'm 6 months post-disc herniation. Thanks. Core 5 or Core 6. Got the dead bug, the marching bridge. Those are two great exercises that are floor-based. You can do them where, even if you feel like you're bedbound, you can do them lying on the bed. You can take them down to the simplest and easiest and smallest amount of movement to start to learn to engage the midsection to protect the spine. You've got the squat, the hip hinge, the step up, and the single leg hip hinge. These exercises are movements that you are already doing every single day, FJ. In the last 6 months, you've been doing squats, hip hinges, step ups, you've been doing single leg hip hinges in some way, shape, or form every single day almost, but you haven't been given any guidance on how to do those. So you start with those, you focus on technique first, and then you build and progress over time. That's the way we do it. That's what you need to do. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. You start adding in other silly things, you know, by all means, guys, post any exercise. You're like, oh, what about this exercise? What about that? Post them in the comments, in the chat on TikTok, guys, and on YouTube. Actually, there are more of you on TikTok. So post in the chat if you've got any questions. I'm going to scroll through those in a second. Christian has said, interested in IDD therapy, but doesn't the good work get undone as soon as you get subjected to gravity? It's a very, very valid question. The reason we have you guys doing things like the bed decompression and the towel decompression is it's a regular opportunity to create this negative pressure that helps draw pressure back into these discs. Not draw pressure, draw fluid back into these discs, get nutrition exchange back into these discs. You're getting the stuff in there, and then the cells, the tissues in that area are going to utilize that material. And it's the same thing with the decompression, the IDD, but just under a greater force. Yes, you are exactly right. As soon as you finish the decompression, you get put back together again, right? And load goes back on. But you're getting that pumping while you're in there. And it's not that that's pulling the disc back and it's going to stay there, because that's not how it works, right? That being said, as you are progressing with your rehab and building strength and resilience, when you put it back on, it's going to be more capable because you've built the strength and resilience. So what people often find with IDD therapy or spinal decompression is you find that you respond better and better and better to the treatment as you are doing your rehab work on the side and building load tolerance. So there is a value to it. For example, you could make the same statement and say, well, what's the point of getting a massage done if I go out and I go and do a squat and now all of a sudden it's tight again? It's that we're helping get rid of, it's kind of like, think of it like all of these kind of treatment mechanisms, right? What's the point of getting your neck adjusted and because I'm going to go back out and look to the right again, or I'm going to sleep like that and it's going to tighten back up again? Yes, of course. But it's giving you that targeted intervention of treatment to calm the area down, get specific exchange of nutrition into that area in a way that you can't quite do on the same magnitude if you're at home doing the towel decompression or the bed decompression. But they are still worth doing, and that's one of the reasons those exercises are mentioned. Or maybe you have an inversion table, so you can do it a little bit better than doing the towel decompression or the bed decompression, and you can do it maybe for a little bit longer on the inversion table, but that's still not quite as good as when you're on the decompression table, for example, the IDD therapy table. So managing and having some kind of intervention in that sort of scenario where we're doing our rehab work, we're leveraging some kind of periodic decompression work in the clinical setting can be helpful. And that's then for you, Christian and others that are leveraging these treatments to say, how much do I feel that's benefiting me? How much do I feel that's enhancing my recovery process? And that's a character judgment. That's the kind of conversation that we're having with our patients nowadays. It's like, let's do it. We can do it more intensively. Make no mistake. I said this before with regards to my knee. When I injured my knee, tore the meniscus, back in June, I was using the laser from the other room 3 to 4 times a day, every day for the rest of that week leading up. And then the week after, once I'd had the MRI, I was continuing to do the laser every single day, 2 or 3 times a day. And then gradually, and I haven't done it in a little while now, like I've made some, it really helped, right? If I had herniated my disc, I would be on the table every single day. When I get cranked a little bit at jiu-jitsu, mostly it's the neck that gets caught out, I'm going in and on the table, which is why some of you guys that notice, it's often set up for cervical decompression when I'm doing these videos, because I've managed to jump on and get my neck decompressed. But I'm gonna go straight back to jiu-jitsu and it's gonna get run through the mill again, right? But I believe it's valuable. I believe it's valuable. So hopefully that rationale, that little ramble, Christian and others, makes a bit of sense. And then you make the decision as to how much it is valuable for you. But yeah, as soon as you come off, like the pressure's still there, but you feel better afterwards. It's nice. Secret team says, have a great day, keep it moving and make it stronger. Meditation time here. Awesome. Awesome. Have a great day, Secret team. Thank you for joining. It's really cool seeing some of you guys coming from all different time zones to jump on these. What else have we got here? Coming back to TikTok. What have we got? I've had surgery 3 weeks ago. What exercises can I do? You want to focus on the spine stability work. It's the same stuff, right? You've had an intervention at the lumbar spine. You've had an intervention at the lumbar spine. I've had L4-5 disc operated one. I've had L5-S1 disc operated one. What changes? Nothing. You can't be, there is no L4-5 on the left-hand side rehab. There's a lumbar spine rehab, lumbar spine injury rehab, or lumbopelvic region rehab. So we want to focus on stabilizing that area. That's the most important thing. We have Mel commenting here. Can numbness eventually go? I've had it since July in the foot and leg, had a microdiscectomy in August, but no change yet. So we actually had a comment on this. One of the guys in the members area posted. Similar sort of time frame. He actually joined us in July though. I don't think, Mel, you're a member of the program. If you are, definitely get into the group and have a look at Ken's comment because it was really cool. He's up now squatting 80 kilos, 80, right? Aggravation free. But he had this numbness, a little bit of nerve damage as a consequence, a little bit of foot drop prior to joining the program. And he literally did an update in the comment today and was like, I am walking better. My foot's not there yet, but it's notably improving week by week, month by month. Nerves heal very slowly. We talk about the adaptation process in the muscles, a matter of weeks responding to stimulus, right? Weeks of continuous stimulus to respond, right? Then we talk about the spinal structures. We're talking mostly about the ligamentous tissue that is providing integrity to these segments of the spine. That's months. Nerves heal very slowly. And the thing is, like, for the nerves to heal, for example, in that case, for the nerves to be healing, you have to first stop injuring it, stop aggravating the area. Having the microdiscectomy might well have done that direct pressure on the nerve and removed that. But if we're not doing proper rehab and we're still aggravating and irritating the symptoms, then we're still potentially irritating the injured part of that nerve as well, or the irritated part of that nerve. So we have to make progress on the rehab, and then you will steadily notice, if it's in the peripheral nervous system, that things start to improve. They will improve very slowly. The specific neurological, if we've got that element of nerve damage associated with it, they will be the symptoms will be the same all the time because the nerve is damaged to the same degree all the time, right? It's not that it's been irritated transiently, it's that it's damaged. And it's going through a healing process, but it is very, very slow. So you need to focus on the rehab side of things to make progress there. Mango said, flare-ups make me hopeless. Yeah, man, they do. They do. It's tough. It's tough because you have to live life every day with that back. But that's why you hook your motivation to the process of going through the process. Like, for example, that example, you know, members up to 80 kilos on the squat, squatting 10 reps of 80 kilos without any aggravation of the symptoms whatsoever. Like, that's awesome. And you're seeing significant changes within the body, within their daily life, within their ability to walk, with the way in which their foot drop in that particular example is progressing in a good way, right? Not progressing as in worsening, but it's resolving, would be a better word, right? But that is a function of progressing through the rehab. And what happens is, as you progress through the rehab, if you're still only squatting or hip hinging with no kilos or 10 kilos or 5 kilos, you're not at a point where you're building where you have built significant enough rehabilitation to safeguard you against daily life yet. But you just have to keep going. You have to keep going and see the progress, and you'll find that the flare-ups happen less and less and less. You recover from the flare-ups faster and faster, and it requires more and more out of the ordinary action to result in a flare-up. Bilal has said, I have recurrent back flares, 2 weeks since I got mine. There's just more pain with extension or twisting. I've burning pain on the front of the thighs, been doing McGill Big 3 with no progress. Overall improvement, it feels like I can't address the main issue. I'm always apprehensive. I would suggest looking at some of the Core 5, and Bilal, have a look at the program as well. The McGill Big 3 is missing out some elements, and I don't find it as progressive as the stuff that we talk about, although there are a lot of similarities between what McGill talks about and what we talk about. And judging by the profile pic, bodybuilding, that kind of stuff, I would significantly be looking at what you're doing in your daily life, because it's almost certain that we're still doing a bunch of other stuff, and that's the problem. We need to focus on a neutral spine and start to build some element of understanding for how the spine works, right? Protecting and preserving this neutral spine. So often there is a significant, not so often, there is a significant amount of disparity in the way in which the McGill Big 3, even the individual exercises, are taught, right? I've watched Stuart McGill talk specifically about the curler, the one where you're lying on your back and you've got your hand behind your back, right? He teaches the hand to be behind the back to preserve the lordosis. I've seen others training and teaching these things, that exact exercise, telling people to flatten their back into the ground with no support for the lordosis. They've missed a fundamental that McGill knows is important to maintain the stability of the lumbar spine, the lordosis, the natural position, the optimal position. Now, I would argue that I don't know why, or I would question why the forearm. The forearm isn't straight. My shoulders have to crank up to get into that position. I might not actually be able to reach if I've got a long spine and short arms, relatively speaking, right? Why not just use a towel? So little things, little points of critique, I would suggest. But that's why we've got exercises like the Core 5, why we talk about those, and why we talk about in great detail. I would suggest having a look at those. And guys, those of you that haven't, you can always check out, link up in the profile page if you're watching on TikTok. And if you're on YouTube, Bilal and others, check out the link there. And if you're watching after the fact on YouTube, guys, I'll post it in the pinned comment. Watch the video there. It explains a little bit more about the program, what we do, how it works. But we talk about all of this stuff all the time, right? The Core 5 exercises, the dead bug, the marching bridge, the squat, the hip hinge, the step up. They're great exercises because you're maintaining and supporting a neutral spine. You are not moving this spine. You are holding it still. And to the degree you experience pain when you do those exercises, it means you're doing something wrong. You experience pain at a specific point of the dead bug as your leg was going out, and it was because your back arched because you didn't control the spine. Or you went to do the marching bridge and you did a pelvic tuck before you lifted and you got some pain because we shouldn't do the pelvic tuck. All these little technical errors, that's the great thing. When you're doing a neutral spine exercise, you generally get pain when you fail to maintain a neutral spine, which is incorrect. And so it gives you that immediate kind of guardrails to know that you're doing it correctly, and equally know that you're actually maybe not very good at it. Or in some cases, if we've got a background of training, we can actually progress relatively quickly and get into the technical skill of these things with reasonable success in a relatively short period of time. That being said, if we've got a background in training, there might be some practices that we've had in the past that aren't serving us. We need to watch out for those, especially in like the bodybuilder space. You guys know what happens when you get towards the back end of a rep, especially on something like squats or deadlifts, and you're working hard, you're pushing yourself, etc. And you ground that rep out. You're doing your squats, right? You got the weight on the bar, got the bar out, okay? We got it up on our back, and we're doing our squat, and we're going like that, right? I saw one of the guys the other day. He was doing, I think it was like 700 pounds on a deadlift, right? And he's doing a PR. Many of you guys will Lane Norton, he's very, very strong, right? And he ground out that second rep, right? Spine's moving all over the shop, relatively speaking, okay? Because I've seen him do reps at like 400, 300, and they're solid. If you're pushing like that and you've got an injury, you've got to back off, right? You've got to understand that some of the techniques that you've been using in the workout space while you were not injured are potentially going to trip you up when you're going through the recovery process. So just be mindful of those little things in the trained individuals. Bilal has said, my recent back flare was when I tried to brace with a belt during a row. I genuinely feel my core muscles are very inactive, hence I overextended. Yeah, I think, so I was doing I went to a strength seminar by Sean McKinroy, a strong Australian guy with a mustache. You've probably seen him on social media. He's very big on Instagram. And really, really good seminar. But he said something very important to me. He said, you earn the right to use a belt when you don't need it. And so he was squatting in the seminar. He did some squats, raw, no wraps, no nothing, facing the wrong way with 220 kilos. You guys don't need to be using belts in the gym. It's a pet peeve of mine. There is no rationale, I think. There's no back health rationale for using a belt in the gym. Absolutely none whatsoever. And I really don't think they're worthwhile at all. Certainly not on a row. Why are we using it? It's creating we can make the argument that depending on where exactly we're wearing it, it's creating a false insertion in the lat muscles. So if we're trying to do a row, are we getting in the way of the full functioning of the lats? Like all sorts of different things. But the belts, no place. If you're trying to do a PR, so for reference in that particular case, the max weight you would do with belts and things on is a 300 kilo squat, I think was his record, right? Just going from memory here. And he did 220 with us in the seminar. Yeah, he's using a belt for 300, but that's not a decision for his health. That's a decision to peak performance. I've got to ask the question of those of you guys that use belts in the gym for sub-maximal work, why aren't you walking around in a compression bodybuilder lifting suit? Why aren't you using Mark Bell's slingshot while you're doing everything? Oh, because that's a bit unnecessary. Why aren't you walking around with sleeves on every joint? Oh, because that's unnecessary, right? If you're training to improve the health of your body, you need to create the environment, like to make it real, right? I really don't, lifting with straps, any support. For me anyway, personally, I'm training to improve the general health and well-being of my body. I'm looking to make it stronger so it's more resilient so I can do the things I want to do. In jiu-jitsu, I don't get to go in there with a head guard, with a shoulder strap and with a knee and belt. So there's no point me training with that kind of stuff, I would argue. I'm definitely open to discussions on that. But certainly when it comes to the lower back, if you've got, most of you guys have L4-5 and L5-S1 issues. That's down here, right? The lower part of the lumbar spine. The lowest you are wearing the strap is going to be at the L4 body. You're not getting to protect these areas. And so you can't even put it at the right level of the lumbar spine. So I think they've got no place. Certainly not for back pain. If you're going to do them for a max lift, fair enough, right? To increase intra-abdominal pressure, I understand that. I understand the use case, but don't think that the use case is to help your back. The use case is to just lift a bigger number. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps. I'm not assuming Bilal's stance on that. He said, oh yeah, I agree. That's ironic how 2 sets before I wasn't using a belt. I have no idea why I wanted to try it. Yeah, I just, boom, in the bin. I think using the belt successfully, like using belts in the gym for lifting, I think is actually a skill. You need to know how to use it effectively. And I think just playing around with them, like unless you're trying to be an Olympic powerlifter, I think there's no need. What have you got? I've got a very old, hard herniated disc and sciatica. What can I do? You've got an injury to the lower lumbar spine, I suspect, probably L4-5 or L5-S1. You strengthen this area. You build control over the lumbar spine. You provide stimulation through things like squats and hip hinges to build the axial load tolerance, the ability of that spine to load bear. And you progress that rehab over time. Exercises like the Core 5 Nova Pulse. Those are the ones we're talking about. Perfect example of someone. Click the link up here and go and have a look at the video that's linked on the profile page. backinshapeprogram.com/start. And that will tell you a bit more about the program. And that's what you need to do to go through the recovery process. Yeah, JP, using a belt at work. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Because all the belt is going to do in the working environment is allow you to move in peculiar ways, and it's going to fixate probably L2, 3, L3, 4. And if you've got an issue at L4, 5 and L5, S1, now all of a sudden, instead of all of the joints of your lumbar spine being exposed, you're hyper-exposing those 2 joints that are not braced by the belt. Aaron has said, I have an annular tear at L4, 5 and L4, 5, and it has started to heal. Can I sit if it doesn't hurt? Make sure, I mean, you can do whatever you want if it doesn't hurt. I would suggest you'd be better off focusing on the rehabilitation work, right? So just going and having a look at your rehab, your squats in particular. Squats and hip hinges are always a great place to start. If you cannot squat 10, 15, 20, 30 kilos without aggravating the lower back, bear in mind when you sit down, you put 40 to 90% more load through the lumbar spine. And so if you're not squatting, whatever those figures are for you, then I would have a look at maybe focusing on the rehab first and trying to continue to limit the sitting durations. And when it comes to starting to heal, how you feel with regards to your back has no bearing whatsoever on the current capacity of the lumbar spine at all. The only thing that you can realistically use, I would argue, and again, guys, these are always kind of 2 ways, right? You guys can comment. But I would argue that the only way you know how healed your back is if you're doing rehab and if you're testing it. Because that's what rehab is there to do, is to stimulate in a careful environment, load going through this lumbar spine, and then you see how you respond to that. Is 15 kilos too much? Is 20 kilos too much? 25 was more than I could bear. So that's how healed you are. If you're not doing any rehab that involves the participation of load and actually exploring what you can and cannot tolerate in the safest possible environment, then you have no clue and you're leaving it to chance. And that's not very wise. And that's why so many people have flare-ups when they think they've healed, because they're going on how they feel rather than an objective evaluation metric of their current status, status quo. Bilal said, what's your stance on people like knees over toes promote freaky flexion of the spine? My personal stance is that the knees over toes stuff is absolutely awesome for knees because he has a really good experience of knees. And we've got a scenario where we take the Midas touch, I think, and maybe being a little bit blunt just because we get this question quite a lot, right? I think the knees over toes stuff is absolutely awesome. I've used it extensively for my knees because there's been vulnerabilities that have been explored in my previous modes of training because I've only ever, I do squats to like a quote unquote a normal range, right? I'd be doing squats in the gym, and I always remember when I was first starting jiu-jitsu a couple of years ago, and we had to do all these shooting drills, right? You're there, you're doing a warm-up, right? And you're down there and you're coming down through like so. You're doing a bunch of those, right? And your knees are in funny positions. And I was like, man, I'm not conditioned for this. And then the knees over toes stuff made a hell of a lot of sense in that environment, right? I can control my knee joint. When I've injured my knee, I can control it. I can move it this much, this much, this much. I'm doing a squat and it hurts. So recently I had the meniscus issue. Okay, and I knew that as soon as I got to this point, at this amount of flexion in my knee joint, power's gone. And I had to hold on to something, right? Now, I can do it, right? I tested my knees out the other day because I was using the knees over toe stuff to recover. I'm 90 kilos on the squats for good range of motion squats, down 90 or just below, 10 reps, awesome, right? First test, and it was 3 months ago that we got the MRI and showed the meniscus damage, right? Medial and lateral meniscus. But we're taking the Midas touch and applying those exact same principles to the spine without knowledge of the spine, without intimate knowledge of the spine in the same way. The spine is not a joint that you have conscious control over. It's not a joint where you can easily measure the amount of movement that's going through it. It is a stick of vertebra bodies stacked on top of one another, which should have a set amount of tension going through them at all times. When we've injured the segment, the herniated disc, etc., we have injured the ligaments of this, which mean that it's often there's a degree of hypermobility to it. And so instead of movement going through a equally tense series of joints, like the flexible reading lamps that you get where you just pull it and the whole thing bends, an articulated column, if you will, like the spine, we have a weak point, a wobbly point. So when we bend, all of the movement keeps going through that one joint. When the person moves in one way or another, because the spine is injured and the spine moves as this articulated column, the movement leaks through that injured segment and ouch, it hurts. That's what happened. Movement went through there. You don't injure anything by not moving it. It gets injured in the process of moving and straining tissues that restrict that range of motion. And you don't have control over the segmental movement of your lumbar spine like you do the knee. So the principles of that go to a point that doesn't hurt in terms of bending are visually verifiable in the knee. They are not in the spine. You can't see where my spine is. You have no clue of how much it is or isn't moving. And you only have this experience of actually seriously appreciating this when you've had significant experience of working with imaging. For a very long time in the early parts of my career and the middle parts of my career, every single patient that came in with back pain had associated imaging. They had x-rays, they had MRIs. In a lot of cases, we also had flexion extension views. So you can actually start to appreciate what's going on inside the spine. And so you realize that actually a lot of people, well not a lot, but a good number of people that struggle with lower back pain that have disc-related injuries, actually their spine when they're standing up is flexed. So you're saying we need to add in more flexion? You're creating a hyperflexion within that individual's lumbar spine, and you don't even know you're doing it because you don't know what you can't know from the physical exam. And unfortunately, if you've got the experience of having a relatively reliable physical examination process that you're used to with the knee, and you're trying to apply that same thing to the lumbar spine, you've got a massive, massive blind spot in what you can and cannot know in the physical examination of the lumbar spine. And that's why I think there are some significant issues with some of the obsession around the lumbar flexion. Granted, is it okay to flex the lumbar spine and do a Jefferson curl? Yes, if you have a healthy, strong spine. And even in those cases, there are other quirks, right? If you've just been sat down for 20 minutes or half an hour in a flexed position through the lumbar spine, and then you get up and try and do that movement, you will be dealing with different levels of integrity to that joint, the lumbar spine, particularly L5-S1 and L4-5, than under ordinary circumstances. Because ligaments go through a process called creep. We've talked about this before with regards to remodeling of the spine. And so your spine is not the same in terms of its integrity if you've just got up from sitting in a funny position like so for a long duration. Not a few minutes, not 5 minutes. We're talking about 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes still. In this, you've just been sat like this having a chat. 20 minutes goes by, half an hour goes by, an hour goes by, and then you go to get up, and then you suddenly go down like that, and that L5-S1 is super flexible, moves loads, boom, we've got a problem, right? And that's why habits make a massive difference. That's why the neutral spine and understanding makes a massive difference. And why also the incorporation of flexion-based exercises, forward bending-based exercises, like they do there, in some of the other stuff that's kind of spun off the success with the knees, in that stuff, I think it's missing stuff. It's missing these understandings. And sure, some people are going to do great. They're going to get through it, but it's not the safest way. It's not the most reliable way. It's not the most repeatable way. So, hopefully that helps. Could probably talk about, or probably should talk about that in more detail, but hopefully it makes sense anyway, the rambling I went on to there. Jay Mango said, I can sit for an hour in a chair, but when I drive for just 5 minutes, I can feel my leg afterwards. It's all about the positioning. It's all about that positioning. Also, how you got into the chair versus how you get into the car, even that itself, if we're not very strong, like you're not getting, like you might be, so let's say hopefully, you're actually being cautious about how you get in the chair. You're like, okay, yep, boom. You can't do that with a car, right? So you're probably like, in we go, bend, round. And then you're sat in the car like this. It's just different. It's putting your spine in a different position when you're sat in the car versus when you're sat in a chair. But Jay Mango, you need to focus on the rehab work. Definitely get it. I would strongly suggest get stuck in to some of the material we've got in the program. It'll really help you. It takes time, but it'll really help you. Guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm just going to quickly scroll through some of the other questions on here. What else have we got? How can I differentiate between normal sore muscles versus aggravation after back rehab work? I have a sitting job. What's the best way to sit? Try and sit with a neutral spine as best you can. Aqua aerobics isn't going to do anything to rehab the lower back, but floating around in the pool is a relief-based strategy. You're just putting your spine under less load, so that's not a bad thing, but you're not actually rehabilitating the L4-5-S1 bulging discs. You need to do strengthening-based rehab. If I will add load, I'm worried. my fissures will get bigger and the bulge. Of course, that's a very reasonable concern. Yet the problem is you're adding load every single day by the way in which you're moving around. So you can either do it in a controlled environment to drive strengthening in these discs, or you can just keep doing it randomly, and that's going to be a problem for you. This is the biggest problem that we're worried about flaring things up from exercise. I'm worried about careful, controlled movement with a purpose, watching myself, but I'm not worried about random, sporadic bouts of activity that happen in everyday life. We've got it on our head. If we're worried about having rehab and having flare-ups or making our herniated discs worse, do your rehab and pay appropriate attention to it. Get involved and do things in a proper, structured way. Krishna says, sciatica is a strange condition. 1 minute agony, the next minute gone. After inactivity especially. Yeah. Often, a lot of the pain with the sciatica is that you've got inflammation in these little holes, and then you turn one way or another and you squeeze down on the hole because the hole changes size. And when the hole changes size, the pressure increases dramatically, and boom, we get that electric pain down the side. And then you move back again, and then you open the hole back out again, and then the pressure isn't there anymore. So you're not pressing on it. It's exactly the same as you bang your funny bone, right? It's not a funny bone, it's a little nerve that runs behind the inside of the elbow. You smash it, you get radiating, shooting pain down the arms, and then it goes, gone. It's very, very similar in that sort of way. So guys, hopefully this has been helpful. What are we, Thursday today? I'm probably gonna go live tomorrow, we'll see. Those of you guys that need more help, like if you are struggling with lower back pain, there's a couple of you guys posting things about herniated discs, L5S1, L45, sciatica, that kind of stuff. Go, if you're on TikTok, go and check out the link in the profile page. Have a look at the program. It will help you, or we will help you. And those of you guys on YouTube, again, same thing. I posted it in the chat. You can always have a look afterwards. And thank you to all of you guys that came on, asked questions. I appreciate that. Keeps me thinking, keeps me sharp. And I'll see you guys on the next one, okay? Take care, guys. YouTube, thank you. Thank you to all of you for joining. See you later.